Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new to my channel, hello, my name is Caitlin Elliott and I cover true crime cases on Tuesdays and Fridays with my more vintage cases being posted on Fridays. Now if this is something that interests you, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so that you never miss any of my uploads. So in my last video we covered the case of the actress Brittany Murphy. And I wanted to discuss whether or not she had actually been murdered, whether or not she, had an accidental overdose, or whatever the possibility could be. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the case of Molly McLaren. So this case is one of those cases that leave you just absolutely frustrated and just so irritated because, like I said, it's one of those cases that could have been prevented if someone would have just, stepped up and stopped everything from happening. So this case begins back in 2017 in England with what seemed like an innocent, workout at the gym that day. So on June 29th of 2017, there was a man named Joshua Stinson who arrived at the gym that day for his daily workout at Pure Gym, and he placed down his mats for his exercise right nearby his ex-girlfriend, who was 21-year-old Molly McLaren. Molly was in her second year of college, or uni as it's called over in England, and she was preparing to become a professional fitness instructor and a blogger. So Molly was very, very dedicated to working out, and she absolutely loved to exercise and would often spend a lot of her free time in that gym, and she would be there constantly. Meanwhile, Joshua Stinson, he was actually a salesman from Rochester, England, which is said to be only 15 minutes away from where Molly went to college at in Kent. It was said by those who knew Joshua that he had a very long and lengthy history of unhealthy relationships, if you know what I mean, where he would become this extremely abusive and controlling guy, and he would become manipulative rather quickly towards his significant others. Both Molly and Joshua ended up meeting online in a chat room, and they immediately just connected on a level that, some of us don't really understand. So, however, when it came to the same website chat room, he would often go in there and bully and harass anyone he possibly could. So he made it seem like he was just this big charmer guy, when in reality, he just treated people like shit. So for 21-year-old Molly McLaren, it became a fresh new start for her because she would be starting university very soon. All of her close friends and family members claimed that, Molly was getting extremely excited about going there, and, she was so excited to be studying both health and fitness at the University of Kent. As we all may already know, college is a lot of hard work and a lot of studying to keep up these good grades. And along with all of this, there's also the life of partying. There's a lot of college parties. A lot of people used to drink alcohol underage. So that was not something that Molly was totally used to. She was not used to going to parties at all. She was raised to be like this really smart, really good girl, if you know what I mean. So on September 28th of 2016, Molly ultimately would settle back down into university after she was off for her break. And, she decided she was going to walk around campus, and this included a shopping center that was nearby the college. So this shopping center was said to be approximately 7 miles away from where Molly grew up, so she was familiar with the area. During her very first lecture at the university, she had noticed there was this nervous girl who was struggling to pay attention to the lecture because she did not know what was going on. She wasn't used to everything. And this kind of made Molly, feel a little bad for her because, it's everyone's first day of university and she just seemed so nervous. So she decided that she was going to walk over to the girl and sit down next to her and just make her feel welcome. So this girl's name was Jennifer, and she and Jennifer ended up hitting it off and having this almost instant connection, as it was said by Jennifer. and they just chatted away and became the best of friends. They were practically inseparable. Molly's charming personality really helped her form a brand new, inseparable group of friends. And this happened almost immediately because she just had that personality that everyone was just drawn to and attracted to. So she really enjoyed meeting new people because she wanted to learn more about everyone out there in the world. So the group started to spend a lot of time together, and they ended up all sharing this unique, love of working out as well. So she ended up finding a bunch of friends that had the same type of hobbies as her. Because Molly was so sweet and kind to everybody she met, she quickly was able to form a group of new friends. The group of them, including Molly, would travel quite often to Chatham, England, I think that's how you pronounce it. This was to go out for dinners and just go out and just, lounge around, do what normal 21-year-olds do. So Chatham was approximately 36 minutes away from the University of Kent, so it wasn't too far of a drive for the friends to go to. Along with Molly and Jennifer, the other girl's name was Amelia Davis, and the three of them were all in the same classes, the same lectures. They all knew each other, and they decided to just hang out as friends. So because I'm from America, like I said, I'm not familiar with how lectures work. We just called them college classes, college courses. You ever really had lectures? I think we did have a lecture hall, but it was very, very rare that was used. So I had to actually look up what lectures were. I feel stupid, but I had to. So, as well as making all new friends and going out and partying, Molly, she loved to put forth as much effort as she possibly could into her schoolwork. According to her friends and family, anyone who knew her ever since she started going to college learned very quickly that she was extremely dedicated and hardworking, and she was said to also have a very incredible personality. Molly was described by her friends as being able to just light up a room just by being who she was. And she would often arrive at these lectures with a happy mood, and she would just have a cup of coffee with her. And Jennifer often stated that she also shared this love of going to the gym with Molly because she would always make it fun and never really stress anybody out. As Molly's friends would, continue to get to know her better, they discovered that she actually had a really charming and outgoing personality. Molly and Amy would continue to spend a lot of time together, and this was to the point that they were practically inseparable. You would not see one without the other. So because they were just inseparable, they ended up also getting jobs together at the same place, which was called Ted Baker, and they grew even closer as friends and would consider themselves to be like sisters. So for many college students, relationships and dating would quickly become the primary focus. A lot of guys, when we go to college the first time, it's like, oh my God, they're so cute. And, a lot of girls, they just want to pay attention to the datings and just put classes aside. So for Molly, she really wanted to find love, and her primary focus, was getting love. She really wanted to find something more than just one of those quick fling college romances, and her dating history was said to be practically non-existent. She maybe dated 2 or 3 guys before going to college ever. Along with this, she was said to have never had any intimate relationships, and because of this, she really felt like she was missing something in her life, and this was what it was. She really wanted to find this perfect man. I'm using quotations because no one's perfect, but Molly didn't want to have a boyfriend just because everybody else did. She wanted to find a long-term lover who would eventually become her future husband. I'm sure we all felt that way at one point. So because she wanted to find someone, she wanted to ultimately, graduate college, be able to settle down, start a family, and move to wherever she wanted to go. Molly and her friends really rotated their lives around social media, and this was a majority of young girls and young guys, they normally do. Everyone rotates their lives around social media. You got YouTube, you got Facebook, you got Twitter, you got Instagram, you got Snapchat. Everybody has at least one of those. Even in my family, I got grandparents that have Facebook. So social media is a great way to view what your friends are out there doing whenever you're not able to see them. Like for me, you know, I've got friends and family on like the whole other side of the world, and you know, I don't really get to see them, so I use that as a way to, you know, see what my family is up to. So you could also add location tags onto your posts and stuff, and this could show your friends and your family where you are. Like, oh, I went out to dinner tonight at, you know, over in Chatham today, I went to London today, you know, that type of stuff. And, you know, this was to show, you know, like where the pictures were taken. Molly, like I mentioned before, she wanted to create her own type of fitness blog. So she would often post videos of her workout, and she would post these training videos of how she works out, what she does, and she would post these onto social media, onto her Facebook and her Instagram as well. So once Molly had started going to university, she really started, you know, just writing, like getting into this blog that she had, just writing more and more, and a lot of her friends really loved what she had to write in this blog because of how inspirational what she wrote truly was to them. So according to multiple friends, Molly would always seem to climb over every single obstacle that was in her way, and she would do so, and it just seemed like nothing could put her down or anything like that. She would do what she could to even get perfect grades. So behind all of her perfect grades, what seemed to be her perfect life, her jam-packed lifestyle, it was said that she was actually struggling with a lot of personal problems that no one really knew about. She was actually battling a lot of intense mental health issues. Girl, I feel that. I have anxiety, I have depression, I have ADHD, I get that. And she would constantly put up this front of wanting to seem perfect to her friends and family, so no one would suspect a thing that there was something wrong. Molly and Amy had been working together for quite a long time before Molly would ever even open up to Amy about the problems that she was going through. She kept everything to herself with the fear that her friends were, you know, will get too close to her and then realize what she's like and then not to want to be friends with her anymore. So once they did become really good friends, you know, Molly finally let Amy into her life. This was when Amy found out her friend was really struggling a lot with, you know, a lot of personal problems. She kept such a tight lock and key on her personal life because she was worried that if she let her guard down, she would get hurt. So she was like so closed from her friend, like closed off from her friends emotionally, would not tell anybody anything. And it just made her friends feel like they didn't even really know Molly that well. And what's even worse is they had no idea that Molly had an eating disorder. So she had actually been diagnosed with bulimia, which is a pretty severe eating disorder. It's not like anorexia when you don't eat. So with bulimia, you eat and then you force yourself to throw up because you don't want these calories. And, you know, no one knew because she just seemed like she had just such a perfect life. So she would constantly, you know, struggle with this disorder, and she would try to hide it from her friends as much as possible. She didn't want anyone to know that she was struggling with this. Molly, even though she never had opened up about her eating disorder to her friends, would openly admit to her friends whether or not she was having a bad day, but she refused to give up hope. She would say that even though, you know, the sky is gray and everything seems so dark, there's always, you know, a ray of sunshine and a rainbow at the end of every storm. She was, you know, constantly telling her friends that, you know, they needed to find at least one good thing out of every single day and focus on it and try to find the positive outlook on life. Despite all of her issues, Molly really used university as a way to help herself better, like get better mentally and physically, and help her find a purpose in life, along with wanting to find a pretty serious relationship. On June 18th of 2018, Molly's first year of university had officially ended after her exams. She was really hoping to find love, and she recently downloaded a Tinder app, which, I mean, I've heard a lot of sketchy stuff about Tinder. I'm sure you all have too. And Tinder is not considered to be the safest app out there. It's a dating app where it would match you, like little Susie Q over here with Johnny Bob, because you had stuff in common, you'd match, and then you would message each other and, you know, try to start a relationship. But sometimes, you know, a lot of these relationships, I'm using quotations, would go sour, or it just seems like a little off. People sometimes use fake pictures, they lie about their age, they lie about where they're from. It can just end up to be pretty chaotic. So pretty soon after downloading the Tinder app, Molly would end up making her very first match on the app, and this was to a young man who was 24-year-old Joshua Stinson. Josh lived not too far away. He lived about 9 miles away from where Molly went to school, and he lived in the Woden village of Kent. I'm not 100% sure what that is. I'm not from England, obviously. And this made Molly like really happy that she matched with this guy. She ended up sending Josh her very first message to him in late July. And after a while of chatting online, the two of them decided that it would be best for them to meet up in person and see if they really connected as well as they did online. When they finally do, Molly informs, her friend Jennifer about her meeting this guy Josh for the first time and that they were going to go out on a date. She said that things were just going really well and they continued to go on more and more dates because everything just seemed to be perfect. Eventually, the two of them will go on to become this official couple, boyfriend and girlfriend, and Molly was absolutely just thrilled to have this boyfriend in her life. She had never had a serious relationship like this before. So, every single free moment that either of them had, they would spend with each other, and her friends would come afterwards. So she was putting her boyfriend before her friends, her family, anyone else. They also shared a lot of things that were in common, such as a love for exercise, which really excited Molly to no end because, like I mentioned before, she absolutely loves exercise and loves to work out. So Molly was thrilled to be in such a serious relationship with Josh that she felt like she could actually share her secrets with this guy. Sorry, there's a fly that just flew in from nowhere. And the two of them were said to have a lot in common with one another, and this really connected them, especially since both of them were said to have had mental health issues as well. He informed Molly that he also suffered from anxiety, and this was just like Molly, and he had depression. And this really connected them even more. They were able to do this because they had the same disorders, and Molly decided that, she would do whatever it took to try and, cure Josh, so to speak, of, his anxiety and his depression, and try to help him cope with it as much as possible, despite her having that as well. So it was then discovered that Josh had a pretty troubled past, and he actually covered this up and hid it from Molly as they became partners. He refused to come out about his past. As several months go by, it seems like the relationship just begins to just flourish. So the two of them, they were just absolutely head over heels for one another. They loved each other so much. They were talking about marriage apparently at one point. They were just, infatuated with one another. The two of them, they refused to leave one another's sides, and they were constantly texting and talking about when they were going to go hang out next. In January of 2017, this was right after Christmas break, Molly would return back to university for a brand new semester. So when it comes to college, I actually used to be in college before I PC'd, I moved to Hawaii. So they give you a Christmas break, and it's about, it's considered the end of the fall semester, and you would be off for a whole month, and then you would go back in early January and then start your spring classes that would end between April to May or June. So at this point, Molly, she has been dating Joshua Stinson for a few months and decides that she wants to formally introduce him, to her friend Amelia. All three of them traveled to the gym together, and while at the gym, Amelia just noticed that Josh just did not seem that he was quite right in her words. So he seemed like he was portraying a type of behavior that was bizarre enough to put Amelia on edge and make her feel extremely uncomfortable. I'm sure we've all had that situation before. When she met Josh, she noticed right away that he really didn't talk very much and seemed pretty stone cold solid. And this was whenever they had just first met each other. She really wanted to be kind and, welcoming towards him because that's her best friend's boyfriend. She wants to be nice. And she realized on this particular day, she decided, you know, she was going to make a joke. I wasn't sure exactly what the joke was about, but she decided to make this joke to try and lighten the mood, you know, make it seem a little less, you know, tense. You could sharply could cut it with a knife, if you know what I mean. And for some reason, this was just not the best idea for them to do. So after the girls left the gym, Josh began messaging Molly about Amelia, saying some pretty hateful shit about her, just met her, and saying, you know, I don't like her, I don't want you to be friends with her anymore, and was just trying to come in between their friendship, which you never put a guy before your friends or your family, just saying. Amelia was instantly disgusted and just turned off by his behavior because, ew, you know, I feel the same way. That's kind of controlling and weird. So, you know, she noticed right away afterwards, after the message was sent, she noticed that something just wasn't quite right with Josh, and no normal person would send their girlfriend something like that, saying, you know, I don't like your friend, you know, you can't be friends with her anymore. Like, that's weird. So Molly and her friends really believed that they had known Joshua Stinson pretty well, especially since Molly was dating him. But it turns out that this would all just be a facade. It would become known that he had actually had a history, which was a very dangerous history, may I say, that involved his previous girlfriends. This was brushed off by Molly because she didn't believe this was true, and just said that these were all rumors made up by spiteful ex-girlfriends who were just jealous that he had moved on, and they were still upset over their breakups with him. However, Molly's friends, on the other hand, they would notice something extremely frightening, like some extremely frightening behavioral changes when it came to him. And Joshua Stinson was just said to be, you know, he was described by their friends to be extremely manipulative. And when it came to their relationship, he would do anything that he possibly could to just get them to spend time together, even going so far as to show up randomly at Molly's house just to see her. After a while of this disturbing behavior, you know, she begins to feel that she just really needed some space from Joshua, because she never really has any alone time, because he's always just showing up out of the blue like, hey, you know, it's me. How dare you go do things without me? So it's extremely important in a relationship, any type of relationship, marriage, dating, engagement, whatever. No matter how old you are, it's always important to have space in your relationships. So this would prevent arguments, this can prevent divorces sometimes, and it can also prevent the fact that some spouses or, you know, significant others, they begin to feel smothered by the fact that their significant other does not allow them to have space. I am the same way. I hate whenever people don't give me space. So Molly, she decided to send him a text, and this text read, "We can't be together 24/7. I feel really pressured." This is a pretty reasonable request, honestly. You're just asking for some space, you know, just because, you know, you feel like you're always with him and you need to have some personal time. I mean, it's understandable. But it said that Josh really did not handle this request that Molly gave him well at all. So he became extremely belligerent towards her, just disrespectful, just calling her names. Molly then tells her friend Amelia about this, about what Josh had told her over text, and she was completely shocked and stunned that, you know, he would say something like that to his own girlfriend and not feel bad about it at all. According to many friends that, you know, Molly had, there would often be times where she would put herself down and blame herself for things that she couldn't control, especially in the relationship. At this point, it became obvious to Molly just how manipulative and abusive that Josh truly was, and it made her realize that he was trying to do whatever he could to isolate her from her friends. In March of 2017, as spring was beginning, Joshua still becomes more and more controlling towards Molly, and she started telling her friends that she was just feeling extremely suffocated, and that it seemed like she had absolutely no control at all over what she could do. She had no alone time, no free time, because he was always there. It became obvious now that, you know, this was just not what Molly wanted out of a relationship. sure it's not what any of us want out of a relationship. And she decides, you know, she was going to officially end the relationship once and for all. She has had it. She is tired of not being able to go anywhere or do anything without Josh knowing and coming along with. And, you know, I mean, I feel for her, girl. I mean, I feel for her. So she can only take she can only take so much. You can only take so much from people before you just crack and you lose it and you're like, no, I can't do this anymore, and you put your foot down. Pretty soon, you know, like I said, you know, she would end it, and despite Molly saying that, you know, it was over between her and Joshua, he wouldn't accept this at all. You know, he refused to believe that it was over, and he would send Molly like a bunch of messages, basically just begging her to come back to him. He couldn't live without her. You know, he loved her to death, didn't want to be without her, didn't want them to break up. But, you know, unfortunately, what Molly didn't know was that when Joshua's previous girlfriends would in fact break up with him, he would become extremely violent and threatening towards them. There were instances of this where, you know, it was said that he had spat constantly in an ex-girlfriend's face after they broke up. He threatened to murder another ex by telling her he was going to drown her forcibly. And then he slashed a third one's tires. And, you know, I'm guessing that Molly really didn't know anything about this, because a week after their breakup, she decided to take him back against the advice that Amelia had given her. As soon as the couple got back together, because, you know, Molly was assuming that Josh could, you know, be better and improve himself and they can improve the relationship. But unfortunately, you know, it just got worse because Joshua just continued to pick right back up on his abusive behavior. There was one instance where Molly decided to make plans with her friends because they were either going to go to the mall or to a concert, and Joshua would invite himself along and be like, oh, so cool, where are we going, when are we going, I want to know, you know, I'm going to be there to take you guys, I'm going to come with you. And, you know, it just seemed like he would practically force himself to go places with her because he didn't really trust her, and trust is really important in a relationship as well. And, you know, even if she stated that she was going somewhere, he would ask who she was going with, where she was going, why she was going there, and, you know, he would just force himself to tag along to make sure nothing bad happens. Even if she like I said, even if she did all that, you know, he would do that, and it just made her feel so upset and frustrated. Josh started pushing away all of Molly's friends and family, trying to isolate her, because this is what abusers do. They try to isolate their victims so that they can have power over them. So, you know, in a last-ditch effort to try to attempt to save the relationship, girl, she is just, at this point, she is just holding on to this relationship by a thread. And she wants to go out and see what they can do to salvage the relationship. So they decide to travel on holiday, which, if you don't know what that means, it's basically like a vacation in, you know, the United States is what we call it as a vacation. Over in England, they call it a holiday, with Joshua, and they were going to go to Tenerife in the Canary Islands. The Canary Islands are beautiful. She was really hoping that the two of them could have some alone time together, and if they did spend this alone time together, this could help salvage their relationship. She was also hoping that if she spent this quality time together with him, Josh would finally appreciate her more and understand her and let her go out and do things that she wants to do. So unfortunately, the vacation would go sour pretty quickly, as I think we all figured it would, and Molly would eventually call her friends and tell like all of them, you know, just how awful everything was going. Her friend Jennifer became extremely concerned by Molly's behavior during this time because, you know, she was just worried that, you know, because it was just Josh and Molly, what if Josh would abuse Molly and no one was there to protect her, you know? So this really made her upset and worried. Molly claimed that it became increasingly obvious that Josh just wasn't on board with any of the changes that she had implicated in order for the relationship to go on, and this frustrated her beyond belief. When she noticed that Josh had this lack of effort put into the relationship, this made her come to the realization that he was never going to change, and it was just time to just cut it and end it once and for all. On June 17th of 2017, it was an extremely busy Saturday night in Kent, England. Because it was Saturday, Molly decided to go out for dinner that night with her friends to celebrate her 23rd birthday. Both Molly and Josh, they were still, somehow still together at this point. I thought they had broken up, but no, they were still together. The night started going pretty normal, and it was just easy going until something caused Josh to just snap and go absolutely berserk and crazy on Molly, causing an argument right in the middle of the restaurant, which would be so embarrassing. This really set her off, and she just had enough at this point. She was just tired of his behavior, tired of him treating her like shit, and she put her foot down and ended up breaking up with Josh that night officially. So, while still at the nightclub, he would go on to become pretty aggressive towards everyone there, and this included their friends that they had. He ran throughout the club, yelling on the top of his lungs, "She's finished with me! She's fucking finished with me!" And this was like in front of all of their friends. And it was at the point that Molly's friends finally saw the real Josh, as we like to call him, the real Josh, and just how crazy he really was. So after the breakup, Molly decided it was time for her to just remove all forms of contact from him in her life, and this included the phone number and Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, just any way that he could message her, she blocked him on. So, despite all of this, he would still, this was when a nightmare would officially begin for Molly. Joshua then starts publicly attacking Molly on Facebook, and luckily her friends made her aware of this. Everyone managed to report these posts to Facebook, and many of the friends were still in contact with Joshua still, which I don't know why. Maybe it's to be a little nosy, you know what I mean? Despite Molly saying not to be friends with him just because he gave off some bad vibes. At one point, a few of her other friends informed her of what was going on because he had just screenshotted their personal messages through Facebook Messenger and plastered it all over his page. And this was so everybody and their mother in the world could see this. It was like Josh was just trying to publicly humiliate Molly, and, this was some sort of like a revenge game for her breaking up with him. Molly had created an online image of herself based on this healthy lifestyle and fitness goals, but however, Joshua decided he was going to make it his own personal goal to do whatever he could to ruin her perfect image as sort of a revenge for breaking up with him. The first thing he did was to spread a rumor on social media, mostly through Facebook, that she was a heavy user of cocaine, which Molly has never used drugs a day in her life. And this really upset her because he was also calling her a cocaine addict, called her cocaine head, and called her a crackhead. And this just made her upset. And if this wasn't bad enough, in these posts, Josh would tag her friends and her family to try and, defame her name. So this was to the point that he just wanted to slander her name and just ruin her reputation out there because she was known as this good girl, this perfect girl, and he was just like, no, she's not. So at this point, everyone just believed that it was just going to be the end of the harassment towards Molly and that Josh was just finally going to leave her alone and move on, as many more of her friends and family continued to block him on Facebook. She quickly becomes terrified that he will stalk her at her home, and she starts to worry for her own safety at this point, which I don't blame her. After these incidents, Molly decides it's best to message Josh's friends and family about his bizarre behavior, and she became extremely alarmed because Josh had known her parents were going to be away during this time. Right after this, he would go on to post this cryptic message that stated, "There's more to come." No one knew exactly what he was saying and what was meant by that post. On June 22nd of 2017, Molly began to feel like she had to do something quickly as possible in order to stop Josh from harassing her. She decided she was going to screenshot all of his threatening messages and disturbing posts along with the other messages that he has sent her, and then print them out as proof of Josh's abuse. Molly then called her mother and informed her of the situation before they both took off towards the local police station. They decided that it was going to be in Molly's best interest at this point to report the harassment that Josh had been doing to her online to the police to see if there could be anything done about the posts, and hopefully that they would be removed. Sorry, I just like jumped. My dog's just like, whew. So the lead police officer decided they were going to do their best course of action, and this course of action was to just call Josh and ask him to take down the posts. This really frustrates me to no belief because, like, you've got this girl who's being harassed, and the only thing you plan on doing is just be like, hey, can you take down the post? Thanks, bye. And that doesn't do anything. So they can just say yes and, you know, just call it a day. Like, why would you call him and ask him to stop harassing her? Why not just show up at his house, get proof of him harassing her, arrest him, and just, you know, do like a no contact thing, you know what I mean? So police officers put the phone on speakerphone when Josh finally answers so that Molly and her mother can both hear the conversation as well. It was said that there was a direct quote from the officer, which was, "Please remove the post so we don't have to talk about this again." That's literally all they said. And once again, like in so many other cases that we have covered here on my channel, you know, the police are doing everything that they can to help this poor girl, to help this family, and it just seems like this guy, Josh, was just getting a slap on the wrist, like, "Oh, you did bad, sorry." In response to what the police actually said, all Josh had to say was, "Aren't we?" This really showed his arrogance and just how cocky and rude he truly was. And he believed at this point that he was just untouchable and he could do anything he wanted to Molly and not get in trouble at all. After this, Molly immediately texts her friend Amy about what was going on, including how Josh had been acting just extremely emotionless since their last conversation and how this really scared her. So he was quickly turning into, oh, hold on, I gotta stretch. Ugh, sorry. So he was quickly becoming into this very dangerous and manipulative and just vile man. And this was just horrible and scary for Molly to have to endure. His behavior became so bad, it started to increasingly worry both Molly and her mother. So they decided to print off flyers about Joshua to hand out to neighbors so the community could be aware about what's going on, and maybe if he showed up in the neighborhood, you know, trying to see Molly or whatever, they could report it to the police saying, "Hey, this guy is in the neighborhood, there's flyers posted around him, can you guys come and do something?" On June 27th of 2017, Josh decides that he is going to leave work early and travel to ASDA in Chatham, England. And while here at ASDA, he decides to make a purchase of a Sabatier paring knife. I hope I said that correctly. Before traveling a little while later to a hardware store where he purchases a pickaxe before making his way back home. These are just extremely concerning purchases. Like, why would you need a pickaxe? You know, like, why would you need a knife? Like, it's very bizarre. That same evening, the police, they phoned Molly and informed her that Josh has agreed to remove the Facebook posts, along with the knowledge that all of her friends had officially blocked him on Facebook as well. However, despite all of this, you know, helpful information, he still finds, yet again, another way to stalk Molly. So Joshua befriended another young girl, and this was through social media, and he managed to manipulate this girl into adding Molly on Facebook so she can report things back to him. He managed to uncover her social media reports, her locations, and even Molly's daily activities that she had been doing and posting on social media. On June 28th, 2017, Molly had planned to go onto a night out again with her friends to a bar in Chatham Docks, and she decided to just harmlessly post on Facebook, you know, her location and where she was going. And unfortunately, the new girl is now her friend on Facebook, so she is able to relay this message and this information back to Joshua, and so now he knows Molly's exact location, where she's at, and what time she got there. So as the girls were celebrating some really good news, I think it was said like they got some really good grades or something like that, and at this point, this is when Josh shows up out of the blue, and he shows up there, and he had another girl with him at the bar, and this girl is presumed to be the one that had added Molly on Facebook. So the friends believe that it was just really strange that Josh would be in the same place as them. Her friends soon finds out, though, through Molly that she had actually posted her location, where she was going, what time she was going to be there, and they became extremely frustrated at Molly for doing something like that, knowing this guy obviously does not seem mentally well. So her friends, they were also worried that how she would react to Josh being there, especially with another girl. But Molly stated that she no longer loved him and that she didn't feel jealous at all about him moving on. Molly McLaren had been trying to do her hardest to push Joshua Stimson out of her mind, and despite all this, he still had other plans to force himself into her life. He noticed Molly at the bar that day, and he smiled at her, and she, along with her friends, just packed up everything they had, paid for their bill, and just dipped as quickly as possible. So they were unsure if Josh was in fact following her or not, but they really wanted to play it safe just in case. Josh continued to make the friends extremely uncomfortable as he would continuously walk up and down past the table where Molly and her friends were staying at. This made the girls so uncomfortable that even though they left the first time, they thought they would wait it out and then come back. They just packed up everything and just left. They didn't even bother sticking around. They were just like, nope, we're not coming back here. We're just gonna go home. This made them so uncomfortable. Like, it's just so weird for him to just show up out of nowhere. Molly left for her home right away so that she could watch this soap opera that was going to show on television that night, while the other girls decided that they were instead going to stay at the bar just to keep an eye on Josh and inform her of what was going on. So this left Molly in the parking lot by herself. At this time, no one believed that Josh would do anything to her, so she told her friends good night just before going home. The next day, on June 29th of 2017, Molly McLaren wakes up pretty early that day in her home in Kent. She gets dressed in her exercise clothes and she leaves her house and she starts driving to her gym down in Chatham to record another one of her fitness vlogs. Unfortunately, Molly had no idea that while she's driving to the gym, she was actually being followed by Joshua. So Molly would arrive at the gym around 10 o'clock in the morning that day, and not long after she enters the gym, Joshua parks his car across the street from the gym facility, and Amy, she just tells Molly not to worry about Joshua. It just seems like he's not going to do anything, that he's leaving her alone, and this really kept her good mood and her spirits up. Because Molly had arrived so early that morning at the gym, she was the only person there, which really meant like mega privacy. She could do whatever she wanted, but it also meant that no one was there to protect her in case of an emergency. She happily begins to work out, and she's just completely oblivious to the fact that Josh had actually followed her inside of the gym. So as soon as he reaches the door, he hesitates and seems like he wants to turn around to leave, and then he walks down the stairs. Then after he walks down the stairs, he just kind of stops there, and then he's frozen for like a couple seconds. Then he turns back around, goes back up the steps to the gym. As soon as he gets in there, Molly is still so entranced in her workout that she didn't even notice him come inside, didn't even hear him. Molly then, after a while, notices Josh once he places a freaking mat down on the floor next to her, and this really just startles her. She's extremely confused as to why, he was at the gym right now with her, and also why he had placed this mat down right next to her. Molly then sends Amy some texts and some sly photos that she took of Josh whenever he wasn't paying attention, and she sent this with the text reading, "What the fuck? He just turned up and came right next to me." This extremely concerns Amy because she just felt like something just wasn't quite right with that whole scenario. And especially because, he had shown up the night prior at their dinner party that they had, and then now he's at the gym. So it just seems like at this point he's kind of following her around, and it's really weird and starting to freak out her friends. After a while, Molly decides that she was going to try and work up the courage to walk over to Josh and talk to him about why he was at the gym and not at work. Sorry, my dogs. Oh, Riley, say hello. Okay, so, you know, she did ask him, like, why are you not at work? Why are you at the gym when you're supposed to be working? And at this point, he turns to her and says, that's none of your fucking business. Like, his response, like, seriously really pissed me off because he's following her around. She's asking why he's at the gym, not at work, and all he has to say is, it's none of your fucking business, when clearly he's following her. He just got called out on his shit, and he just came back with a belligerent response. So, Molly becomes absolutely horrified that, you know, she comes to the realization that Josh may have been following her and, like, stalking her at this point, but she refused to believe that she just refused to believe that and wanted to believe that it was, in fact, just a coincidence at this point. So, it just seemed like more of these run-ins would happen often and often. She just kept running into him no matter where she went. And at this point, Amy is starting to become more and more concerned about the stalking that he's doing to Molly. So, they were trying to figure out, they sat down, and they were trying to figure out how in the world Josh could have possibly had known where she was going that day. Amy quickly asked, you know, Molly if she had posted online that she was going to the gym that day, for which Molly had responded no, because she hadn't mentioned it on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, nor Twitter. If this were the case, though, how would Josh know that Molly was, in fact, at the gym at that time? So it's very bizarre to me. Like, how would he have known that she was, in fact, there? So almost as soon as he had shown up, he quickly turned around and left Molly alone in the gym as soon as, you know, they showed up. So, you know, she had no idea what to do, and so she began to text Amy, you know, what should she do in this situation to escape Josh and his weird stalking behavior. So Amy tells her to leave just as quickly as possible, do not say a goddamn thing to him, and just get out of there. So this wasn't good enough for Molly, and she then texts her mother and also discusses, you know, what she should do about the whole situation. And Molly's mother gives her, in fact, the exact same answer that Amy did. So at this point, Molly figured out it was the best thing to do because she had two people telling her the same thing, and she decided she was just going to leave. At this point, Josh had been driving around the parking lot just in circles, just waiting for Molly to come out. So she had sent Amy a text message that day as she was leaving, and this said, "I'm always looking over my fucking shoulder." So it was obvious to Amy that, you know, Molly was terrified. She had no idea why this was happening to her, and she was just scared out of her mind, which any of us would be. So, you know, Amy had just had a gut feeling that something just wasn't quite right. So she told Molly, you know, just book it and get out of there without looking at him or talking to him. Just get out of there as quickly as you can. As Molly gets to her car, she has no idea that Josh is still in the parking lot right next to her. Unfortunately, she had gotten into her car. She ended up never replying to Amy's text and left her on red, which really worried Amy. So Amy believed that this was just Molly driving home at this point, but unfortunately this was not the case. So before Molly even has a chance to even leave, Joshua jumps into her car and he just sits down in there with her. Then at approximately 11:08 in the morning, he pulls out a knife and just starts stabbing Molly. He starts stabbing Molly, and this really just, oh my god. He stabbed her a total of 75 times. 75 times. Then, after this, he quickly left the parking lot without drawing any type of suspicion towards him. Amy ends up receiving a message later that day from one of her friends at work, and this message asked if she had heard about what happened over at Dockside. For this, Amy was like, no, I never heard about what happened at Dockside. What happened over there? So she Googled it online and read about the stabbing, and she was just horrified. She's like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe that this had happened, that poor girl. And this whole time she had no idea that this was actually her friend Molly that had been stabbed. So she decided to call Molly and try to talk to her about it. Be like, hey, you know the Dockside that we were just at, you know, something happened over there. It was so scary. So she tried to call her and try to text her, but Molly was not answering. And right away, this really concerned Amy. She knew something just wasn't right and something horrible had happened to Molly. The victim of the stabbing at the Dockside Shopping Center was in fact confirmed to truly be Molly McLaren, to her friends and family's horror. No one had actually had any idea why anyone would do this to such a kind and loving young lady, and this just really upset the community because she was just so nice to everybody that she met, and she ended up being senselessly murdered for what? So on January 23rd of 2018, Joshua Stinson's trial would begin, and he decides to make a plea for involuntary manslaughter, and then claims that he had no idea what he was doing because he was psychologically insane. Unfortunately for Josh, his plea for insanity would fall onto deaf ears as it came out to the public that Josh had a prior history of stalking other women. It was then revealed by the police that he had actually been previously charged with threatening behavior after he had texted a previous girlfriend that he was going to fly down to her location and forcibly drown her. Josh also had another girl that he had dated come forward with information, and this girl stated that he would stalk her as well. So it wasn't just like a one-time thing. This was happening to 3 people now. So the jury at the trial would take less than 4 hours to return a verdict, and they officially convict Joshua Stinson of the first-degree murder of Molly McLaren. He is then sentenced to life without parole, and the judge claimed that Josh was considered to be an extremely dangerous individual, and he did not deserve to be out in the street, so he did not need to get out there for any type of bail or any type of, he couldn't get out with any type of parole or anything like that. On July 10th of 2018, the Rochester, England local cathedral then hosts the graduation ceremony for the university, and this would have been Molly's graduating class as well. The ceremony is completely packed to the brim, and the graduation is said to be one of the saddest graduation ceremonies that's ever occurred for the college. So, Molly's parents were announced as the graduation begins that they were in fact the guests of honor, and they were both handed Molly's diploma and a bunch of flowers that were given by the school because they had her in their thoughts and prayers, obviously. And when this happened, the entire congregation just erupted into cheers for Molly, for support for her family, and her friends were just so excited as well because this made them feel like Molly had actually, felt like she had almost actually received her diploma. And they were just so proud of her. They had always been proud of her. She was very intelligent. She was so hardworking, and they were just proud of the young lady that she was. So since Molly's murder, her friends and family decided they were going to set up a charity for those suffering from eating disorders. Her friends unfortunately did end up learning from Molly's murder that it is extremely important to pay attention to red flags in relationships as well, so this can prevent more tragedies like this from happening ever again. Due to the rise of social media, stalkers now have a new way to go and find their prey. They can lure in young girls by posing as a younger guy, and it could be like a 60-year-old pedophile. You know, they just have this way of being able to lure in these young girls and cause harm to them, like what had happened to Molly, unfortunately. So, before Molly's murder, her friends and her family, they had no idea about this dark side of the web and the internet, and they had no idea that these types of incidences could happen. They had no idea. So when it came to relationships, her friends were now way more aware about the dangers of abusive partners and social media than they ever were before. When it came to, when it comes to like abusive relationships and everything, statistics do say that at least 2 to 4 women are murdered a week around the world by their partners or ex-partners, and a majority of them do in fact involve stalking, just like what happened to Molly in her case. So that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening to Molly's case, and please share this video with everyone you possibly can. Please like it, subscribe, turn on my notification bells, comment down below, and let me know what you guys think about this video, what you think about this case, if you guys have any other case suggestions for me, and make sure you do spread the word about what happened to Molly, so maybe we could prevent stuff like this from happening again in the future. So, her voice will not be silenced. Her story will not be silenced, will not be covered up. So, ladies, please stay safe out there, and do not use any of those dating apps. They are not safe. Please. And be careful about who you date, who you talk to, who you're friends with, and just know that there are dangerous people out there who are posing as people who they do not seem to be. You got this guy Josh who seemed like he was a nice guy and turns out to be a psychopath. You need to be aware of this. Please, like I said, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that like button and turn on that notification bell so that you never miss a video, and I will see you guys in my next one next week. Bye guys!